Welcome to the Mold Matters Podcast. Whether you are looking for help recovering from mold illness or just want to learn more about creating a safe environment for your family, this podcast is the place for you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mold Matters Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Evans, alongside Mike Adams.
Hey, Jer.
Hey,
How you doing?
great. How are you?
Good. Got Christmas out of the way?
Yeah, Christmas and New Year's. It's 2023.
By the way, this is the last year Jeremy is not going to be a father.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be a father in about a month, so
Yes.
it's exciting. And hopefully can keep my family mold-free. We had a flood in my basement.
You did you? Over the weekend?
Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
week ago,
Oh, okay.
over the holiday.
Yeah.
Yeah, so here I am,
Yeah.
I had good practice. I went down and it was pretty bad. It had flooded through. Here's the interesting thing. We talk about water intrusion.
Yeah.
And I'm still not entirely sure how the water got into the basement through the window well. Partially because I'm always here at work or doing other things and I haven't had a good daylight to really analyze it.
Right.
But I mean, I'm down to like two possibilities. I do think it might be my strongest theory is the downspouts, because we have two on both sides and they're the ones that
Right.
go underground.
Yes.
I think they either got clogged up,
Yeah.
and it's kind of overflowing,
Yeah.
or it was so cold back when it happened. I wonder if the water that was in there froze.
And then it
And
had
then
nowhere to go.
and then do you remember when it rained? It was
Yeah.
freezing, then it rained.
And then we had an incredibly wet snow also on
Yeah.
top of that. Yeah.
So I don't know. Again, I need some daylight to really analyze it, but I did end up having to kind of pull the carpet back
Yeah.
and get out a bunch of fans. So
Yeah.
I drove over here to the office, grabbed a bunch of fans, and
Well, it's amazing how even 1 gallon of water can saturate carpet.
oh yeah,
And it's also amazing how just a drip, drip, drip can add up to a gallon in almost no time.
yeah. To make the story even worse, it was about half the room that got wet. So I pull up the carpet, dry it out, go to work the next morning, come back after that evening,
Yeah.
and it had done it again. But because I had pulled the carpet back, it was able to penetrate even deeper.
Oh, great. Yeah. Nothing to absorb it.
Nothing
Yeah.
to absorb it.
Yeah.
So now the whole room is totally torn up.
Yeah.
So I'll put it back together. I'm actually excited I've never done the pad myself as far as reinstalling it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to reinstall it just for
Yeah.
fun.
Huh.
And so that actually fits in with so today, just by way of introduction, we're going to talk about 10 things you should know about mold. And one of those actually has to do with this. So I'll kind of hark back to that when we get to that point. But this is kind of just a fun little checklist. We'll just address each point, give our 2 cents on each one of them. And Mike, if you don't mind, let's give us number one.
Yeah. Number one on 10 things you should know about mold. Potential health effects and symptoms associated with mold exposures include allergic reactions, asthma, and other respiratory complaints. And then we would throw in a whole huge list after that.
Yeah.
I always said, look, I'm no doctor. I just know what I've seen after being in hundreds of homes and talking to hundreds, if not thousands of people. But the symptoms, it seems though there are two different what I call two different grades of symptoms. One is the more acute things like allergies
Mm-hmm.
and asthma, even sinus infections. And then there's more neurological or I don't know if that's the right word, but things that
Psychological.
yeah.
maybe.
things that include anxiety. And in fact, you have a list there, Jeremy, that
Yeah.
is on one of our brochures.
Yeah. Kind of the mental, emotional, lack of focus, depression,
Yeah.
like you're saying, mood swings, word recollection. Yeah. Brain fog
Brain fog is big.
is huge, obviously.
Yeah.
That's one of the big three. If I hear brain fog, I'm very keen on maybe there's a mold issue. Yeah. Nervous system,
Yeah.
headaches, tremors, twitches, numbness, tingling, vertigo. You know what's funny? I remember when I first started studying the health effects of mold, I remember reading like different doctors, and I remember reading one doctor say there are over 20 symptoms that can be associated with mold
Yeah.
illness. Then then I started reading more stuff, and then I hear another doctor say 25, and then I read another book last year, 40, and now I'm convinced that there's probably over 100. I mean,
Yeah.
because it's not really, the mold isn't necessarily attacking, just I'm going to attack your arm right now. It kind of attacks the systems, and
Yeah.
however the body, each
Yeah.
body is a little bit different, each situation is a little different, and how the system reacts to that can manifest in so many different ways
Yeah.
that lists are almost insufficient, but nonetheless, it's good for people to see the most common ones.
It can really mess with your health and
Yeah.
your family's health. Yeah, it's incredible.
We said this a bunch of times, but if it's a big mystery, you can't figure it out, and you go to lots of doctors, it's not 100%, but there's a decent chance it could be your own home
Yeah.
and mold.
Yeah. In fact, we work with, just to put a plug in for Dr. Jeff Wright down in Provo, but he and I had a conversation not long ago, and he said, I end up with some of the toughest cases because people have gone from doctor to doctor through the traditional route of, Western practice MDs. Couldn't seem to get any real answers. They could treat the symptoms, but couldn't get any real answers. He says, I end up with the toughest cases. And he said, more times than not, in fact, I think he gave me a percentage, maybe 90%. It's either mold or like a cavitation, a tooth cavitation or
Yeah.
something, a bad root canal gone bad
Yeah.
for years. But he said mold far and away is the most common in his practice.
Yeah. I know, it's so interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to number 2.
Okay.
So by the way, this is a list we found online, and we're kind of commenting on each of these. So number 2 is, there is no practical way to eliminate all mold and spores in the indoor environment. The way to control indoor mold growth is to control moisture. And we've talked about water. Water is the way you control mold, right? You control the
Yeah.
water, you control the mold.
Mold is going to come into your home.
Yeah.
Even after a perfect treatment, mold will come in again. The challenge is to not give mold a surface that it can thrive on.
Right.
And that's, we don't talk about our process necessarily very often, but that's what our process does. It eliminates or makes the surfaces in the home very inhospitable to
Right.
mold. And so it doesn't have what I call the mold. On an untreated home, mold has a luxury of being able to bounce off surface to surface to surface, seeking moisture and food.
Mm-hmm.
And even if it goes dormant, it's still viable, and it continues to bounce around and float around and whatever until it finds food and moisture, then it's off and growing. And so, again, your house will have mold. What you don't want is your house your mold finding a place to thrive.
Right.
That's where you get into trouble.
Yeah. So I think that is, especially in the remediation world, when you do perform kind of some kind of mold treatment in a home or a building, and you take some kind of air quality testing afterwards, and
Right.
they see, wait, there's 3 Basidiospores and 2 Cladosporium spores. I thought you guys treated this
Yeah.
place.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of real world stuff. Yeah.
We've breathed in more than that right here of those 2 spores.
Right. There's more on this tip of this pen right now. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. Number 3, if mold is a problem in your home or school, you must clean up the mold and eliminate the sources of moisture. That's absolutely true.
That is true. I did write on that note. It is very difficult to completely clean up a school. We've done it many times,
Yeah, we
but
have.
it takes some time, and it's just, mold, or some of these schools around, at least in Utah, they're 50, 60 years old or more.
Yeah.
And they've had time to grow mold
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah. Is there any other reason why school is difficult? Just because it's old usually, and
Yeah, I think so. In fact,
tons of spills from all the school children over the years and
Right.
stuff like that, accidents and
yeah.
toilet overflows.
When I was in high school, if you played on a varsity team, we had a team room, what we called a team room.
Mhm.
It was a locker room. And I look back now, that was crazy, but that locker room was carpeted. that team
Oh,
room. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was cool because you felt really special. If you had a locker in the team room,
Yeah.
you know, you were one of the guys.
Yeah.
But we'd come out of the shower soaking wet, walk on that carpet day in, day out. That carpet was in there for 15, 20 years at least.
Yeah.
It had to have been well, it stunk in there. It
Yeah.
stunk really
Oh,
bad.
yeah.
And so I'm sure it was mold in that carpet.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah. Schools. Okay. Number 4, fix the source of the water problem or leak to prevent mold growth. I mean, some of these seem a little bit self-explanatory.
yeah, really obvious. Yeah.
But actually, having said that, it's surprising. Sometimes there are those situations where, hey, come fix my mold, but there's a roof leak still going.
Right.
You know, there is still that water heater having issues.
Yeah.
I mean, there are those select circumstances where you might remediate before you fix the moisture intrusion, like in very rare circumstances where
At least get the house better.
if they're deathly ill and for I can't even think of a good example off the top of my head, but or even if they're closely, you know, you come in today and that guy's coming to fix the water heater tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe we can make an exception, but
But I would say always double back and do tests to make sure everything's okay.
yeah.
After the water leak is fixed.
And there's that kind of rule which is in a later point here, but there's that 24 to 48 hour rule of mold growth.
Yeah.
So it's like, if it really does only take, you know, a day, and if it really only does take a day for mold to start growing, then you've got to make sure you fix the water.
Yeah.
To really.
The other thing that I've often thought about, Jeremy, is that when they say 24 to 48 hours, mold can start to grow. They're kind of offering the idea that you may get mold, you may not, if it's in that 36-hour range, right? Well, a lot of that depends on how moldy, or what we call how elevated the original mold load was in the home when you had a flood. We've had homes where we go in and they said, look, we had a flood. We didn't notice it for a couple of days, but then we got it cleaned up right away. Oftentimes, there are not really any visible signs of mold yet.
Yeah.
Other times, they've had it just for a couple of days and mold is just thriving.
Yeah.
And it has everything to do with, okay, how much mold was already in that home before that water event occurred?
Yeah. I know. See, even with our little flood in our basement, you know, I got the fans on it really quickly. I got to it within, you know, the first one I got to it within, I think, 6 hours, within a half a day.
Yeah.
And then the next day, again, within a half a day, and got fans on it and dried out. But I even came, you know, I'd come check on it every day, and even still go down there. There's a little funk.
Is there?
A little funky smell. And I have a fairly clean house. I've kind of treated it for mold.
Well, let me ask you this. Is there a chance that it's been going on for a while in kind of a minor level?
Yeah.
And then finally, when there was a lot of water, it really hit you?
Yeah, it's possible. It's definitely possible.
Yeah.
Okay, number 5, and then we'll do a quick kind of commercial break. Number 5, reduce indoor humidity, in parentheses here, 30 to 60 degrees relative humidity to decrease mold growth by, and this is a lot of this stuff we've already talked about. This is kind of just a good checklist for everyone to go down. So by 1, venting bathrooms, dryers, and other moisture generating sources to the outside.
Yeah, let me throw in one thing real quick.
Yeah.
Is we see it a lot where people vent their dryer either into a crawl space or vent it into an attic, or my dad actually vented his dryer into his garage, thinking that, well, that'll keep the garage kind of warm during the winter, you know. All bad ideas, real bad.
Is it more common, do you think, with the laundry vent than like a bathroom vent? It seems like people try to jimmy rig the laundry more often.
It seems
than
like it
they
does seem
try
like that.
with
Yeah, it kind of does seem like
the bathroom fan.
I
They do the attic venting
yeah,
erroneously, but
yeah.
yeah. Okay, so and then next point on that is decrease mold growth by using air conditioners and dehumidifiers. That's so true. Air conditioning is one of the key components to regulating the humidity in a home or an environment. And then dehumidifiers, or as they call it in the industry, dehus, they, you know, we don't have as big of an issue here in Utah, but
Right.
as I talk to people in the humid areas, I think it's definitely an underutilized,
Yeah.
the standard, the typical homeowner isn't thinking, yeah, I'm going to buy a dehumidifier for my house.
Right.
In Utah, people buy humidifiers, which have caused some issues with mold here, but
it's, I've seen studies on this too, but it is amazing how much more comfortable your home feels when your humidity is lowered. You don't
Yeah.
have that, at 75 degrees in a dry home feels pretty okay. 75 degrees with 60% or 70% humidity feels awful.
yeah,
And so it's a win-win to dehumidify your house.
yeah, I totally agree. The other point there on relative humidity is increased ventilation.
Yep.
And we've talked about that as well.
Uh-huh.
Just cross flow. Windows are always good in the summer. Anything you can do to increase ventilation. In fact, I don't remember if I talked about this when we talked about rising damp when I was in the UK. The big issue, yeah, they have lots of humidity and they're basically, it's not swampland, but it's so humid and wet
Right.
that the indoor environments are really humid, and they don't have forced air.
Right.
They just have like radiant heat because they don't really need, they don't need air conditioners really.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's no forced air, which is fine because forced air has its own issues, but then there's no circulation of air.
Right.
So, I know a lot of the encouragement out there is, okay, get something to move the air and then
You're
dehumidify.
gonna laugh at this, but in fact, I've said this to a number of people. Sometimes you have to pretend you're a little mold spore. I have to say little in front of that. I could have just said mold spore, but sometimes you have to pretend you're a mold spore, right? If I'm a mold spore and I'm in a house, what do I not want?
Yeah.
I don't want air passing over me
Yeah.
because I'm going to dry right out and shrivel up and go dormant.
Yeah.
I would love a little bit of moisture
Oh,
around.
yeah.
Yeah.
You get thirsty.
Yeah, real
You wanna
thirsty.
drink.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
the same thing with in my opinion, with crawl space encapsulation.
Mm-hmm.
If I was a mold spore, tuck me under that encapsulation. I'm loving life.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Yeah.
going to be wet down there, and sometimes you have to pretend you're a mold spore.
That's so funny. Oh, we're never going to forget that one. Okay, last point on reducing your indoor relative humidity. Using exhaust fans whenever cooking, dishwashing, and cleaning. You kind of hesitated when we were chatting about this before.
Yeah, I'm not sure why. I guess I don't completely understand it. It makes
The cleaning one.
the cooking and dishwashing makes sense because dishwasher puts out steam, and cooking does the same.
Yeah.
The cleaning,
Yeah.
I just don't
I
understand.
wonder if they mixed, because, VOCs
Yeah,
gets lumped up with mold often because they're both air quality contaminants.
right.
And they often say when you're cooking, turn on the fan. It'll absorb, it'll
Yeah.
suck up the
Yeah.
VOCs.
Now I have seen this. I have seen sinks and
Or
bathrooms.
when you're cleaning, not cooking.
Yeah, I know what you meant. I have seen this when your sink has mold in it, like your bathroom sink. It gets worse when you turn the fan
Yeah.
on in the bathroom if
Right.
it's in the same vicinity as the sink,
Yeah.
because it kind of pulls the toxins out of
Yeah.
the sink. So
Okay.
yeah, I'd just be careful with that one.
And last thing I want to say about relative humidity, we don't talk about it that much, but this may seem really, really basic, but relative humidity means relative to the temperature. So if the temperature is at 75 degrees, now I know I've talked to my brother and realized this isn't exactly correct, but it's a simplified version of it. At 75 degrees, air can hold a certain amount of moisture.
Right.
And so the relative humidity at 75 degrees, say the relative humidity is 50% at 75 degrees. That means that air is 50% full of what it can hold. When it hits 100%, that's when you have serious condensation
on
and-
all surfaces.
yeah, on all the surfaces. So
Yeah.
relative humidity is a good measure of, it takes into account the environment, so, and the temperature. So
It's all relative.
it's all relative.
Yeah.
30 to 60% relative humidity. You and I both talk about this a lot. 60 is kind of talked about as the number, but none of us like to see 60.
Well, there's studies out there that show you can grow mold at 60%.
Yeah. So
So that's a tough one.
yeah,
50 is much better.
50 is great.
Yeah.
And, if you can even go even a little lower, I think it's great. So
Yeah.
with that, let's take a quick commercial break and then we'll come back for the
Yeah.
last 5 items.
Sounds great.
Did you know the levels of some hazardous pollutants in indoor air have been found to be up to 70 times greater than in outdoor air? But who's monitoring that for you? Check out mypureproducts.net for the latest in monitoring devices and DIY mold test kits. Take control of your environment with mypureproducts.net.
And we're back.
Yeah, we're back. Great. Okay, as we kind of mentioned, we're doing the 10 things you should know about mold. We kind of found this list online, and we're kind of just going down them, commenting on each of them, kind of offering some insights that we have, and we're on number 6. And 6, Mike, is clean and dry any damp or wet building materials and furnishings within 24 to 48 hours to prevent mold growth.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah,
The success of that, getting it dried out and not having an issue, depends largely on the condition of the house before the leak or
Yeah.
the flood.
yeah,
Depending on your what we call mold load, or
Yeah.
how many spores are floating in the air to begin with.
yeah. And there's quite a science actually that goes into drying. There's,
Yeah.
Obviously the key is getting air to it, and fans is a big part of that. But
By the way, the new buzzword kind of in the industry, I don't know if it's really new, but is water mapping.
water mapping,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's another good way to say that is, where's the water in the house?
and then mapping it.
And then mapping it. Yeah.
Yeah, if you aren't familiar with water mapping, you have moisture meters, which is every remediator and water damage guy's tool, and you can put it on walls or poke it into walls, and it'll tell you how much moisture is on that wall or in that wall. And you just go around everywhere on every wall that you suspect, and you start to kind of create a little bit of a picture of what's behind there as far as moisture goes, and then you can map it.
It sounds really good. Water map. Just we'll need to come over and water map that house if we can.
Yeah. Okay, number 7, clean mold off hard surfaces with water and detergent and dry completely. Absorbent materials such as ceiling tiles that are moldy may need to be replaced.
Yes.
Yeah, those ceiling tiles
Are the worst.
are the worst.
They
should
really
be.
are. Yeah. They're not worth the money that it costs to replace them.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
chuck them and start over.
Yeah, I was texting a person this morning about smoke and how, that's a material that can absorb smoke too.
Yeah.
And it's just like, yeah, we might be able to figure out a way to get it out of there with some stuff we have, but maybe just throw those away.
Yeah. I absolutely agree.
And clean mold off hard surfaces with water and detergent. Yeah. And dry completely. I think water and detergent is a good way to clean it off. There's a lot of, oh man, we were just looking at one this morning. There are a lot of different stain removers out there as well.
Yeah.
Most of them are a sodium hypochlorite base.
Right.
But yeah.
But honestly, anything on a hard surface is going to remove it.
Yeah.
You're cleaning it off
Yeah.
on a hard surface. It's
Yeah.
the softer, more porous things that become a challenge.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Number 8, prevent condensation. Reduce the potential for condensation on cold surfaces, i.e. windows, piping, exterior walls, roofs, floors, by adding insulation.
Yeah, a lot of that is, we see a lot of leaks in attics that are real cold. If you have piping going through the attic, or even the crawl space for that matter, that gets real cold. And then the warm, moist air gets introduced from the house up into that space. It's going to condensate like crazy and start to drip. And you think you have a leak, and you actually don't have a leak. You just have major condensation. And what happens a lot of times is that it will start to form water along the pipe, if you will. And then depending on if the pipe is higher or lower on one end or the other, it'll start to run one direction.
Yeah.
And then it'll hit a point where it loses surface tension and start to drip right there.
Yeah.
And so it can really throw you. Even a leaky pipe will do that and throw you. So you have to be really aware of, okay, this is where it's dripping, but is that where the problem actually is or not?
Yeah. That's a great point. Condensation I still run into you try to name every situation that someone might encounter for water intrusion, and I still run into scenarios where I was like, I've never seen that before. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's a condensation one where I'm like, I wouldn't have thought, this particular setup would lead to condensation.
Well, we see a ton of mold on the north side of attics,
yeah,
and that's the cold side,
yeah,
and that's where it condensates the most,
yeah,
and so that's why it grows. Not that there's any less mold or more mold on the north side than there is on the south side,
mhm,
but that's where the moisture is,
Yeah.
and it's going to manifest. The mold will manifest itself wherever the moisture is.
yeah, yeah. Condensation really does just come down to hot meeting cold, right?
Yeah.
And that's another thing where I think we talked about this last week when we talked about, let's just get a really big HVAC,
Right.
so our house will cool down really quickly. There's those types of scenarios where, I can't think of a good one, but let's just bring a lot of heat into this environment. But you have to, especially with heat and with cooling, you've got to think in terms of the condensation effect.
Yeah. Yeah. Because if you can cool your house off in 10 minutes, but that means your air conditioner is going to sit idle for a time. That's why a lot of indoor guys want the homeowner to keep the fan running all the time.
Yeah.
It would drive my wife crazy to have that thing running all the time.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to the original point is that if that air conditioner sits idle for a time, it's going to condensate.
Yeah.
And think about that 24/7, 12 or 6 months out of the year, you're going to have condensation and moisture, and you're going to have mold.
Sorry, I just thought of one memory when you and I were in Louisiana a few months back, and remember how muggy it was?
Yeah.
And we pulled up to a store, and the windows were really
Yeah,
foggy.
that's right. Yeah.
And you and I even had this conversation. We're like, which side do you think the condensation's on?
Right.
And I think we were wrong actually.
Really? I can't remember. No.
I remember it was
Okay.
on the outside.
Was it on the outside?
Because they air conditioned really well
Right,
on the
it was
inside,
cold
so it was
inside,
freezing
freezing cold
inside,
inside,
and just
yeah.
muggy and hot outside.
Yeah.
And it was on the outside in that case.
That's right.
But,
So the drier air was on the inside.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, anyways, something fun for everyone to try. Guess which side the condensation's on.
It was extreme though, wasn't it? It was. I've never seen it that bad.
Yeah, that was one of the muggiest days of my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, number 9.
Number
In
9.
areas where there's a perpetual moisture problem, do not install carpeting. And there's some examples: drinking fountains, by classroom sinks, or on concrete floors with leaks or frequent condensation. Any thoughts there?
Yeah. You just don't want to give mold a chance to have. What am I trying to say? Constant
food source?
moisture,
Oh.
constant moisture, and a food source at the
Yeah.
same time.
Yeah.
So, oftentimes we see foundation walls that will get wet from the outside.
Uh-huh.
That doesn't freak me out too bad because there isn't, if the basement's not finished, there isn't a great food source on that concrete wall
Right.
to grow tons of mold.
Yeah.
But once you start putting wood against that, okay, now you've got a problem
Yeah.
because the wood will grow mold. And so the same thing happens with the basement floor. If there's no carpeting down there, it's not a great food source for the mold. But
Right.
once you put carpeting down, now you've got an issue.
What you have to do is put yourself in the shoe of a mold spore.
Yeah,
Or
well,
is it a shoe? Not a shoe. But
Their shoes are very, very small. And so that's hard.
You
have
got to
just-
put yourself in their place. Right?
Yes, yes.
So if you were a mold spore, would you want to eat some concrete or would you rather eat some carpet?
I'd much rather have carpet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I know
That's-
that carpet's going to keep me in water for a long time. Yeah.
It's very true though. Carpet is I don't know if you can make a hierarchy with food sources, but surely, your plastics and your concretes, laminate is kind of a plasticky.
Yeah.
Those are much less likely to be, to have mold grow.
Unless
on-
they're dirty.
unless they're dirty.
Yeah.
And
Right.
then it kind of grows on the dirt. Maybe,
Yeah.
Down to maybe your softer,
Your
materials,
cellulose and things like that. Yeah.
cellulose, your papers.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so number 10, molds can be found almost anywhere. They can grow on virtually any substance, providing moisture is present. There are molds that can grow on wood, paper, carpet, and foods. We
Yeah.
just talked about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything to add on that one?
No, I think the I had a thought. It kind of,
Was it your favorite word, ubiquitous?
yeah, mold is ubiquitous.
That
Yeah.
is
That's a great way to start any conversation about mold. They'll think, hey, that guy knows what
that's
he's
in your
talking about.
book
Yeah.
that you wrote. I
Mold
remember.
is ubiquitous.
Mold is ubiquitous. Yeah.
But yeah, mold is it's going to be everywhere. And it's going to be in your house even after a successful treatment.
Yeah.
It will be in your house. And that's not what's making you necessarily sick. It's when mold finds a place to grow, starts putting out spores and toxins. That is what makes you sick.
Yeah.
It's not just the mold. If you could have the same outdoor mold level as you have indoors, or same indoors as you have outdoors, you would never have an issue with
Yeah.
mold. But once you give it a food source and moisture, and it starts to kind of get a stronghold in that home,
Yeah.
and it goes back to that old thing we used to talk about, mold load.
Yeah.
Once the mold load starts to elevate, you're going to have problems.
Yeah. Now, certain molds I know do like different materials to consume. So, like, you know, Basidiospores is known as kind of a wood spore. It likes to chew on wood. It likes to consume wood.
Stacky loves cellulose or
Cellulose.
cardboard and sheetrock paper. And
So there is that to be said that
yeah.
you know, certain molds are going to go after certain materials more than other molds and,
Yeah.
and that kind of a thing. But yeah, that's our number 10, Mike.
Yeah.
That's kind of 10 things to know about mold. Obviously, there are so many more things to know about mold, but this maybe is a good little checklist for anyone who wants to just know the basics about mold removal.
Yeah, and I also think it is really important to pretend you're a little mold spore.
Well, if you remember, Mike, I bought you a
Yes,
mold spore plush one
Yes.
time.
it's great. It's a little.
Like a
I wish I
Stacky-
had it with me. It's a little stuffed animal
Stachybotrys.
of Stachybotrys. Yeah.
You can buy those online. So, yeah, I was as surprised
awesome. Yeah.
as anyone,
It's awesome.
and that's why I had to buy it.
Yeah,
So,
it's
anyways,
the best. Yeah, one of my prized possessions. Little stacky fur animal.
So whenever you look at that, you can say, if I were a mold spore,
Yeah.
what would I do? And
Yeah. Actually, that little plush animal is a great source for mold to be in. Yeah,
yeah.
if it had water on it. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us, guys. We'll
Yeah.
till we meet again, and have a great one.
Yeah. Happy New Year.
Thanks for listening to the Mold Matters podcast. Be sure to subscribe for more in-depth information on mold illness and recovery.